Episode 11. The Last Waaagh. There are moments when history changes, not with a battle, not with a declaration, not with the death of a king, but with a voice, a single voice, one that carries across impossible distances, one that reaches worlds separated by thousands of light years, one that speaks to something ancient buried within an entire species. The summons began at the edge of Orc space. No astropath transmitted it. No machine broadcast it. No fleet carried the message. Yet somehow every Orc heard it, across fortress worlds and scrap worlds, across drifting hulks and attack moons, across empires that had spent centuries fighting one another. The same call echoed, the same command, the same voice, and every Orc recognized it. Ghazghkull Thraka, the prophet, the conqueror, the great beast of a new age. The largest Waaagh ever assembled was beginning. Yet this was not a call for conquest, not a call for plunder, not a call for glory. For the first time in living memory, the Orcs were gathering because something threatened existence itself. Far beyond the galactic rim, Russ continued his conversation with the Exile. But within the galaxy, a different storm was forming, a green storm, one that would eventually shake the stars. Because while humanity debated, while the Necrons calculated, while chaos watched, the Orcs were already moving. Across the Imperium, reports began arriving. At first they seemed impossible. Entire Orc empires were abandoning active wars, raid fleets vanished, pirate kingdoms dissolved, long-standing conflicts simply ended. Imperial commanders celebrated for exactly 3 days. Then they understood what was happening. The Orcs were not disappearing, they were converging. Every new report confirmed it. Warbands moving forward, attack moons changing course, massive fleets abandoning conquered territory, all heading in the same direction, toward a destination nobody yet understood. Within the Hall of Strategy, Guilliman stared at the data. His expression darkened with every passing hour. The projections above Terra now showed 2 disasters unfolding simultaneously: the Tyranid concentration and the Orc migration. Either one alone would have threatened the Imperium. Together, they represented catastrophe. Dorn studied the projections carefully. The numbers. Guilliman looked toward him. Dorn pointed at the growing clusters. They aren't preparing for a raid. No, they were not. Entire sectors were turning green. The scale exceeded anything previously recorded. Even the beast's empire paled beside it. Millions of vessels, billions of warriors, and still more arriving every day. The Khan folded his arms. They're afraid. The statement surprised everyone, because fear was not an emotion commonly associated with Orcs. Yet the Khan continued. They understand something. What? Guilliman asked. The Khan watched the projections, then answered that this war ends differently. No one disagreed, because everyone had begun reaching the same conclusion. The Tyranids were not conquering, they were erasing. Even the Orcs understood the difference. Armageddon understood it as well. The planet had become a symbol, a monument to endless war. Generation after generation had fought there. Imperial Guard, Space Marines, Orcs, entire lifetimes spent battling over the same poisoned soil. The conflict had become part of the world's identity, its purpose, its reason for existing. Then the augurs detected a new fleet, the largest Tyranid concentration yet observed. Not a tendril, not a splinter, a true hive fleet. The defenders watched the readings arrive, and for the first time, veterans of Armageddon felt uncertainty. The numbers dwarfed every previous invasion. The wars of the past suddenly seemed insignificant, tiny, meaningless. One officer stared at the incoming projections. World after world consumed. Sector after sector extinguished. Then quietly asked a question nobody wanted to hear. What if we can't stop them? No one answered, because no one could. Far away, beyond Imperial borders, another figure watched similar reports. Ghazghkull Thraka stood alone within the command chamber of his colossal flagship. The chamber itself resembled a cathedral built for war. Walls of iron, engines the size of cities, trophies gathered across centuries of conquest. Yet none of them held his attention. Instead, he watched the stars, one by one, world by world. The reports arrived continuously. Dead systems, consumed populations, destroyed empires, entire orc civilizations erased, not defeated, gone. For a long time, he remained silent. The gathered war bosses waited. No one dared interrupt. No one dared speak. Because Ghazghkull had changed. The old fury remained. The old brutality remained. But something else had emerged. Perspective, the burden of understanding. He had seen too much, won too much, survived too much. And now he saw the shape of the future. A future unlike any war the orcs had ever fought. A future without battles, without struggle, without purpose. A galaxy stripped clean, silent, empty, dead. That vision disturbed him more than death ever could, because death was part of existence. The Tyranids threatened existence itself. At last, Ghazghkull spoke. His voice echoed through the chamber, deep, certain, ancient in a way that frightened even his followers. The stars are going quiet. No one responded. The war bosses simply listened. The fights are ending. Another silence. Then Ghazghkull turned toward them, his red eyes burning beneath the dim light. And for the first time, the assembled warlords understood their prophet was afraid, not for himself, for the galaxy. The bugs don't want to win. Pause, they want to finish. The distinction settled heavily upon the chamber, because even orcs understood what that meant. Victory left survivors, victory left enemies, victory created future wars. The Tyranids offered none of those things, only oblivion. Ghazghkull slowly looked toward the stars, toward the darkness gathering at the galactic rim, toward the greatest battle that would ever be fought. And somewhere deep within his mind, a vision returned, a battlefield stretching across entire star systems, green against black, the galaxy's final war, and at its center, a choice, one that would determine whether anything survived at all. Beyond the galactic rim, there was only darkness. Not the darkness of night, not the darkness of empty space, something older, a silence that existed before civilizations, before empires, before memory. Russ stood upon the observation platform of his flagship. The sanctuary of the Exile filled the void before him. A living kingdom larger than worlds, ancient beyond comprehension. For a long time, neither spoke. The Exile seemed content to simply observe, and Russ had learned that silence often carried more meaning than words. Eventually, the Wolf King broke it. You said there was once another way. The vast consciousness stirred, not physically, psychically, a movement within an ocean of memory. Yes, the answer echoed through every mind aboard the fleet. Before hunger. Russ frowned. The phrase carried an unexpected sadness. Before hunger, as though the entire history of the Tyranids could be divided into two ages, what came before and what came after. The Exile continued. Your people see monsters. You see swarms. You see consumption. A pause. You do not see what was lost. Suddenly images flooded Russ's mind. Not visions, memories, ancient memories. A civilization unlike anything humanity had encountered. Worlds connected not by conquest, but by understanding. Countless individual minds, different, unique, alive, each distinct, each valued. Russ staggered slightly. The memories felt real, because they were. The Exile was not showing possibilities, it was showing history. We were many. The words carried unbearable grief. Different voices, different dreams, different futures. The images continued. Artists, builders, explorers, thinkers. A civilization spread across stars, not perfect, not peaceful, but alive. Then everything changed. A new presence appeared, small at first, barely noticeable. A voice among billions, one mind, one idea, one promise. Unity? The Exile's sorrow deepened. It promised an end to suffering, an end to division, an end to conflict. Russ watched as entire worlds embraced the promise. The vision spread, slowly, then rapidly. One mind became many, many became one. Differences vanished, individuality disappeared, choice faded, the price was hidden, until it was too late. The Hive Mind. The name itself felt heavy, not like a title, but like a wound. Russ understood now. The Hive Mind had not invaded a civilization. It had emerged from one, born from within. A solution that became a catastrophe. A promise that became extinction. The Exile continued. Most embraced it willingly. They believed they were becoming stronger. Together, a pause. Instead they became food. The images darkened. Entire populations absorbed into a growing consciousness. Not murdered, consumed, identity erased, personality erased, memory erased. Everything becoming part of something larger, something endless, something hungry. Russ suddenly understood why the Exile carried such grief. It remembered every individual life, every voice, every person lost. The Hive Mind remembered only biomass. For millions of years, the Exile had carried the memory of the dead alone. Back within the galaxy, Guilliman faced a different challenge. One almost as impossible. Trust. The Primarch stood within a sealed chamber beneath the Imperial Palace. Only a handful of figures were present. Dorn, the Silent King, several Imperial representatives, and a collection of encrypted transmissions. The first contacts, the first feelers, the first attempts at communication, not with allies, with enemies, ancient enemies. Dorn studied the reports. His expression revealed nothing, yet everyone knew what he was thinking. This was madness, necessary madness, but madness nonetheless. For 10,000 years the Imperium had defined itself through conflict. Now survival demanded compromise. The thought left a bitter taste. Guilliman finally spoke. We cannot win alone. The words felt unnatural, yet no one challenged them, because reality no longer allowed pride. The Silent King observed silently, his ancient gaze fixed upon the stars beyond the chamber. Eventually he spoke. Your species learns slowly. Dorn's eyes narrowed. The tension became immediate and the old hostility remained. Neither side trusted the other. Neither side forgave, but neither side could deny the truth. The Tyranids threatened everyone, human, Necron, Elder. The Great Devourer cared nothing for ancient grudges, only consumption. And so the impossible slowly began. Messages were sent, warnings delivered, offers considered. No alliance yet existed, only possibility. Yet even that would have been unthinkable a few years earlier. Far away, another force was gathering. The summons continued spreading across billions of stars, across ancient battlefields, across forgotten kingdoms. Orcs answered. Entire fleets changed course. Attack moons accelerated. Space hulks emerged from the warp. The green tide grew larger with every passing day. Some joined for glory. Some joined for battle, some joined because Ghazghkull had called, and that alone was enough. But beneath all of it, something deeper was happening. The orcs were beginning to understand the galaxy itself was under threat, and for a species born for conflict, there could be no greater reason to fight. Far beyond the stars, Russ looked once more into the memories of the Exile. One question remained, one question that had haunted him since their first meeting. If the Exile remembered everything, if it understood the Hive Mind better than anyone, then why had it hidden? Why had it spent millions of years in silence? Why had it never fought back? The Exile became still. The sorrow within its voice deepened, and when it finally answered, Russ felt a chill unlike anything he had known before. Because every time I resist, a pause, he learns, beyond the galactic rim, silence returned. Russ stood motionless. The words echoed through his thoughts. Because every time I resist, he learns. The Wolf King stared into the darkness surrounding the sanctuary. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Russ finally asked the question, "What does that mean?" The Exile answered immediately. Not because the answer was simple, because it had carried the burden of it for millions of years. The Hive Mind is adaptation. Images flooded Russ's thoughts once more. Worlds burning, civilizations resisting, entire species making their final stand. Each one different, each one unique, each one believing they had found a way to survive, and every one of them failing. Every enemy teaches it. Every battle strengthens it. Every victory becomes part of it. Russ watched impossible wars unfold before him. Ancient empires deploying weapons capable of tearing stars apart. The Hive Mind adapted. Psychic civilizations attacking through dimensions humanity could barely comprehend. The Hive Mind adapted. Species whose technology exceeded anything mankind had ever created. The Hive Mind adapted. Again and again and again. Each defeat made it stronger. Each challenge improved it. Every resistance became nourishment, not only for its flesh, for its understanding. And Russ understood. The Exile had not hidden because it was weak. It had hidden because it was dangerous. Every battle between the two ancient minds risked creating a stronger Hive Mind. Every conflict taught the Devourer something new, something useful, something permanent. I learned this too late. The sorrow within the Exile's voice became almost unbearable. Entire galaxies paid the price. For a moment, Russ saw what the Silent King had seen. Not worlds, galaxies, countless civilizations reduced to memory, the survivors fleeing, the Hive Mind growing, always learning, always becoming more perfect. And for the first time since leaving Terra, Russ felt genuine fear, not for himself, for everyone. Because if the Hive Mind had spent millions of years improving itself, what would happen if it won now? What would it become? The Exile seemed to sense his thoughts. The war cannot continue forever. Eventually, one of us must fall. The words carried the weight of destiny. Not hope, not optimism, only inevitability. One ancient intelligence would destroy the other, and the galaxy would be caught between them, back within the Milky Way. The warp stirred. For centuries, the great game had continued uninterrupted. Gods battling gods, demons warring endlessly. Infinite conflict feeding infinite ambition, the eternal cycle. Now something had changed, only slightly, yet enough. Enough for ancient powers to notice. Deep within impossible realms, a figure watched. A creature of immense power, once mortal. Now something more, something worse, and a demon prince older than many civilizations. For ages, it had observed the material universe with indifference. Empires rose, empires fell. Nothing truly mattered. Everything eventually fed chaos. Every war, every fear, every dream. The warp always won. But now, for the first time, a question emerged. What if there was nothing left to consume? The Demon Prince turned its attention toward the Tyranid advance, toward the unimaginable hunger crossing the stars, toward the future, and for the first time in countless millennia, it felt concern. Not fear, concern, because the Tyranids represented something fundamentally different. Chaos required life. The hive mind required only consumption. One fed upon emotion, the other erased it. One needed souls, the other left none behind. Slowly, the realization spread through the warp. The great devourer threatened more than worlds, more than species, more than civilizations. It threatened the very foundation upon which chaos existed. Across the Immaterium, powers began watching, not intervening, not yet, watching, calculating, waiting. The galaxy had gained another observer, and perhaps another enemy, or ally. No one could yet tell the difference. Far away, within Orc space, the gathering continued. It had become impossible to measure. Every day brought new fleets, new warlords, new empires. The green tide expanded beyond comprehension. Attack moons travelled in vast processions. Space hulks emerged from warp storms. Entire systems emptied as Orcs answered the summons. Imperial observers struggled to believe the reports. The numbers exceeded all previous Waaghs combined, not by a little, by orders of magnitude. This was something new, something unprecedented. At the centre of it all stood Ghazghkull Thraka, the prophet of the Waaagh. The warlord watched the gathering armada from a colossal observation platform. Before him stretched millions of vessels, an ocean of green stretching across the stars, the greatest military force ever assembled by his species. Yet he felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only certainty. The war ahead would eclipse everything that came before. Every crusade, every invasion, every conquest, all of it insignificant compared to what approached. One of his oldest war bosses stepped forward. The giant orc lowered his head respectfully, a rare gesture. "What we fighting, boss?" The question echoed across the chamber because every orc wanted the same answer. Ghazghkull remained silent for several moments, his gaze fixed upon the distant stars. Then he finally spoke, not loudly, not angrily, with absolute conviction. "We fighting for tomorrow." Silence followed. Even the assembled warlords seemed surprised, because the answer was unlike any Ghazghkull had ever given. Not glory, not conquest, not loot. Tomorrow. The simple idea carried enormous weight, because for the first time, the orcs were fighting for something beyond themselves, for the continuation of existence, for the right of the galaxy to keep struggling, to keep fighting, to keep living. Slowly, Ghazghkull raised his gaze toward the galactic rim, toward the darkness where the hive mind gathered, toward the battlefield destiny was constructing. And then he issued the command that would echo across the stars, the command that would unite countless empires, the command that would begin the greatest Waaagh in history. Move. Across the galaxy, engines ignited, millions of them. Attack moons accelerated, fleets surged forward, entire sectors turned green. The last war had begun. Far beyond the galactic rim, within the sanctuary, Russ prepared to ask another question, but suddenly stopped. The Exile had become silent, completely silent, its attention fixed upon something distant, something approaching. For the first time since meeting it, Russ felt fear from the ancient intelligence. Not panic, not terror, recognition, Slowly, impossibly slowly, a second presence emerged at the edge of perception. Vast, hungry, ancient, the Hive Mind. It was drawing closer, and this time, it was not sending fleets, it was coming itself.